Well, welcome everyone to the BSV Quarterly Townhall for October 2024. I'm your host, Manifestable Brett Banfi, and we have a very exciting session for you today where we are going to be covering the latest recap for the Q3 for the BSV Association. We have just going over the agenda, we have a very special presentation today from Mattia from WhatsOnChain, and we will be followed up with some presentations and topics from our value stream leaders and our stakeholders. We are going to be jumping right in with our speaker, Mattia, who will be presenting the WhatsOnChain website as well as the WhatsOnChain API. Mattia, how are you doing today?
Very good, Brett. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Awesome. You have the slides ready. So yes, like I briefly introduced myself, I'm the product manager for WhatsOnChain. And I'll give you a brief overview of what we got here. I assume everybody kind of knows about WhatsOnChain already, so I'll give some news of kind of what's going on and what we've been up to and so on. Walk, like we said, like the name says, tells you what's on chain. And the first thing I wanted to highlight is that we have completely redesigned our homepage and our stats page. Here's a brief preview, but if you've not checked it out already, it's completely live on our website. Any feedback anyone has, that'd be great to get in our Telegram or on our X profile or channel. But yeah, we're very excited about this kind of modernization of our look. And yes, any feedback would be welcome. But in general, WhatsOnChain, as most of you know, is BSV Blockchain Explorer that also offers an API that I'll talk about later. But yes, it allows you to do everything from the basic kind of block transaction address exploration, verifying transactions, and so on, to some of the other features that are coming up in a second. So yes, I think that the main thing to highlight is that WhatsOnChain, even though we're part of TAL, we're providing a completely unbiased view of the BSV blockchain by using independent infrastructure, completely separate. We're running completely separate nodes from TAL, and everything that we show is based on our connections to our peers on the network to help everyone know what is on chain. Then the kind of the biggest feature highlight that I wanted to make today, and also one of our features that has been redesigned, is our stats dashboard. It shows you the last 24 hours of what's going on the network in terms of transactions, sizes, hash rates, what miners are active on the network, what are some of the most popular protocols and applications in the last 24 hours, and so on. And you can click through any of these values or whatever you see here on the screen as a preview to get more information, to get longer time series in terms of weeks, months, and so on, to learn more. But this is updating practically live. So anytime you're interested in what's going on the network right now, you know, how big is the mempool? Are some big blocks coming in? Is there any potential congestion going on the network? You can come here to find out. The next set of features that I wanted to highlight is the tag stats. You can access them also from that stats dashboard. But what it allows you to do is to understand what different applications, protocols, and so on are currently popular on the BSV blockchain. So yes, we have a leaderboard that shows you like I mentioned, the most popular protocols and applications. It gives you some more information on the fees and output values and transaction sizes and so on. You can filter through these, both in the upper chart and the below table. In terms of categories, you can specify different protocols that you want to zoom in, different time periods, and so on. So it's good to understand what's going on the network, what is trending, what is popular right now, and it also provides a great visibility and showcase for these applications for more people to find out about them. Another thing that we have is our plugins platform that allows the community to contribute to what's on chain and to the user experience that is tied to either transaction view, address view, specific output decoding, and so on. So we provide different templates and examples of what you can do. And we've had plenty of great contributions from the ecosystem. But essentially, this helps you as a developer that maybe has a protocol on BSV to enrich, to visualize, to help users better understand what is going on in your transactions, in your outputs, when they come to What's on Chain to check a specific transaction. On the right, there are some examples, but there's plenty more on our website that you can look through. And like I said, it's super easy. You just need to essentially publish a pull request on our GitHub repo. We check that out and publish it for you. You can also keep extensions private or plugins private. You don't need to publish them. So if you want to experiment with something, you can do that as well on your local storage. Yeah, many possibilities there. We're pretty excited about this one. Next, moving on more to our API and specifically still the biggest showcase of recently our UTXO store, which is essentially there to replace and to help scale the capabilities of ElectrumX. We've been announcing that the old endpoints based on ElectrumX will be shut down soon. You still have about a week. We still see some traffic on those. So if you've not migrated to the new endpoints, please go ahead. And also, of course, if you have any questions or issues, let us know in our Telegram channel. I'll talk about that later. But essentially, the new endpoints should have some of the feedback addressed that we've had in the past, and also should scale much better. In functionality, they should be pretty easy to migrate to in terms of ease of implementation, and they provide other things like pagination and so on, already used by some big wallets and other apps in the ecosystem. This is a big set of endpoints that is replacing a very well-established ElectrumX that has essentially bumped into scaling issues. And actually, since I'm talking about scaling, we've recently announced on our X account that we will be shutting down support for SDN network. So in addition to testnet and mainnet, SDN has been another network that's been used for, like its name says, for scaling testing. But it has served its purpose. It's helped us learn a lot, troubleshoot a lot of issues, and we're now ready to move on. We've not seen almost any usage recently on it. So we've decided to take those resources and refocus them on Teranode exploration. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of talk on Teranode after this presentation. But yes, What's on Chain is definitely part of that process. We will be evolving with the Teranode world as it comes. We are exploring testing right now, trying to learn more about Teranode and related services. So there's going to be a lot of work on our side going forward on that. For the user perspective, nothing is changing right now on What's on Chain, but we will follow BSVA's guidance going forward on that. As I mentioned, our API, if the free package, because our API is open, right? You don't need an API key to explore the What's on Chain API. But if you do need more, they're options that should suit everybody's needs. If not, if one of these packages does not work for you, please reach out to us, contact us. We can discuss anything your business might need. But essentially, these packages are here to provide developers and companies with higher needs for traffic, for more requests per second, more API calls per day, and so on. Pretty standard stuff. So yes, if you need something custom, please reach out to us. All the information is available on the TAL platform. Super easy to subscribe. Also, yes, everything should be there. In terms of the dev community, yes, I mentioned that a couple of times. So we have an active Telegram channel with about 500 members now, where you can directly talk to us, to developers. So with any issues, suggestions, feedback, anything you have for us, we announce everything we ship, or any kind of major announcements and news on our Twitter or X. And of course, I mentioned the plugin platform. You can learn more about that on our plugins webpage. All of these things are super easy now to access from our new homepage. So everything should be right there if you just go to WhatsOnChain.com. But yes, that's pretty much it from me. I welcome any questions, anything, and thank you for your attention.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mattia, for that excellent overview of what's on chain. We are going to do some questions here at the end. But if anyone has a burning question for Mattia, we can take that right now. Otherwise, we will move on to the next part of our agenda. So assuming that we're good to move on, I have a question for you, Mattia, but I will save it till the end. We are going to move over to Darren Kellenschweiler and Thomas Giacomo to speak to us about utilization. Darren?
Yeah, so we've been very busy bunch at the utilization stream of the last quarter. We have launched overlay services, which are a network which is visualized here by drones. They're not actually drones, and they're not going to kill you. They're just going to let you share transactions across a subset of all transactions with a particular topic. You can spin up your own overlay network that facilitates application-specific thing between multiple companies, for example. I encourage you, if you're a sort of infrastructure engineer, to take a look at the overlay examples repository within our GitHub organization. That's the best way to get stuck in. And I'm hoping I can click. Can I click? I can't. Someone's going to need to do the click for me. Thank you. So SDK performance improvement. So as some of you might know, we have a TypeScript, Golang, and Python SDKs. The Python one just launched this quarter, a couple of months ago now. The Go SDK has had some contributions from a number of different developers: Luke Rehenas, David Case, Wojtek on the 4chain team, as well as some stuff from Siggy, because they're starting to use that in the Teranode code. So we had a 50% memory performance improvement from Siggy, which is excellent. The TypeScript SDK, we've had a jump, a 10x jump, roughly an order of magnitude in the speed at which complex transactions can be validated. This has an effect on the overlay services I mentioned before. Ups the number of transactions that sort of network can process, which is great. There's also been additions like the sharing scheme. The backup shares scheme has been implemented in TypeScript and Go. So you can split any private key into any number of shares with any threshold below that. So 2 of 3 scheme is typical, that's shown here. But you can do 20 of 60 if you want, and really split things up. And there's a format there that's been designed so that you can print these things as QR codes on pieces of paper, and then later scan them and recombine them to recover a key. So this is an alternative to mnemonics, which are an HD key solution. This is more focused on having like a root key and using 42 style key derivations from there. So it's part of a larger project, Smolder, and that's just the first half of that has been delivered at this point in TypeScript and Go. Arc has had many stability improvements. Shout out to the Handcash team who have been providing fantastic reports on a regular basis. I think we're on report 7 now in terms of their feedback, which has been super helpful in developing just a more robust system overall with more clear yes, no, success, failures in the responses. So if you are using ARC, do take a look at the updated documentation. That's going to reflect the updated granularity with which you receive responses with respect to any double spend attempts that might be detected and any reorg that may have gone on, sort of small reorgs that are sort of a natural part of a competitive blockchain. They happen. ARC now supports multiple callbacks, and we'll give you a callback if there happens to be a longer chain discovered when they've already given you a Merkle path, so you can update your Merkle paths to the longest chain. In terms of the developer tools project, we've mostly been focusing on taking a look at token standards across the ecosystem with a view to kind of congregating around one to really what we're trying to do is make sure we're spending BSV resources on developing open source tools, components, libraries that deal with token protocols that will allow businesses that are just entering the space to have a clear road to standing up a stablecoin, for example. So we've been doing a lot of work on that. We've also been taking a look at standardizing the interfaces with which the interface between applications and wallets and really making that architectural boundary clearer. We're in very initial stages of this. And work is ongoing on that front. So we're working with key partners like Project Babbage, and we're doing a lot of internal work reviewing some of their proposals for how we might define this architectural boundary. Great. So IPv6 and multicast is the last thing I wanted to mention. So the business requirements for the BSV blockchain to be sort of gold logo certified with IPv6. We're working with the ARC team to set out the roadmap to get it gold logo certified, essentially. And with that, I'll stick all of what I said on screen and pass you over to my colleague, Thomas.
Thank you, Dick and Thomas.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So in addition to the open source roadmap, what we are planning to do is to identify the business requirements that we need to implement in order for BSV blockchain open source components to be aligned with international standards. So that's planned for the roadmap for next year. But we have started to reach out to the international standard body, and the outreach team has helped us to reach out to this international standard body. Basically, we are currently part of W3C, and we are extracting the DID, decentralized identity standard to implement them into core BSV blockchain open source components. We are doing the same for ISO standards such as 222 related to the standardization of metadata when it comes to financial transactions. We are discussing also with University College London on that, who did a great job on the different extraction of the different business requirements for the different ISO standard. We extracted the Basel Committee stablecoin guidelines. So the Basel Committee is a group part of the Bank of International Settlement, which is the central bank of the central banks, and they are kind of regulating the banking industry with a lot of different ratios to be respected when it comes to the different banks, and they issue some guidelines when it comes to stablecoin. So these are international guidelines. So we are currently extracting these guidelines to make sure that when a company willing to issue a stablecoin on BSV want to do so, at least they know that the core open source component that they use is aligned with international guidelines. So of course, each company will have to comply to the local jurisdiction and to fulfill the requirement related to the local jurisdiction. What we are currently also working on is to make sure that we move away from the Open BSV license to the Apache 2.0 open source license. We are planning to do it in January. It's not a hard deadline. We are currently analyzing the the impact of moving from OpenBSV to Apache 2.0. The reason behind that is that we analyzed 30 external developer tools, so outside of BSV, and out of the 30, only 8 were compatible to the OpenBSV license, because the OpenBSV license is not recognized by the open source standard bodies. So that's why we, after several workshops and legal analysis, we have decided to use the Apache 2.0 license to make sure that we would be able to distribute our BSV open source component to existing developer tools. We are also performing some security audits, and we are currently finalizing the discussion with Trails of Bit to audit our TypeScript SDK. We are starting with the TypeScript SDK, and then progressively we will securely audit all the different open source components. We have clarified, obviously, our roadmap for next year, but basically, to provide you more visibility on our roadmap, is quite simple. We are quite focused on the Mandala upgrade, so making sure that we are upgrading the network with the Mandala upgrade. So Teranode, overlay services, SPV Wallet, and the different SDK. On the utilization side, we are not covering Teranode, we are covering the other parts. And next year, we will make sure that all these components work well together, and we're gonna make sure that we address the different requirements coming from applications and also align these open source components with international standard. That's why we are preparing the discussion with international standard bodies now. And then we are engaged in some strategic projects. The first project is a pilot program project. We are partnering with a company called Kite Financial to launch a stablecoin in Uganda. The role of the association here is to test our open source component in real world environments with a private company. So we have met the central bank. They provided us with their green light to use their sandbox. We are going in Uganda next week to present BSV blockchain to central bank, Ministry of Finance, and the financial regulatory body. And the idea will be to just launch as fast as we can a stablecoin in Uganda to then be able to. So we're going to launch it in a physical marketplace in Kampala, and then as soon as it's launched, we're going to iterate, gather feedback, and make sure that if there are some CBDC discussion, at least we have a stablecoin running that we can also leverage for any additional discussions. We have set up a partnership with University College London. We are one of the sponsors of the Future of Money initiative. It's a kind of think tank used by different central banks to discuss either CBDC or stablecoin. So we were at University College London 2 days ago to be part of a panel on that front. So it's a very promising partnership, especially when it comes to different research programs that we can potentially discuss with this partner. And obviously, we have a strong partnership with AWS. What we are currently doing is that we are aligning our open source components to AWS marketplace requirements, so that any entity of the ecosystem can become an integration partner of these open source components and distribute these open source components within AWS marketplace. So you can imagine that if you are interested in distributing SPV Wallet within AWS marketplace, you can come to us, and then we can help you to become AWS integration partner as part of AWS marketplace. We think that it might be a good distribution channel to reach out to as many enterprise customers as possible. So these are what we have done in the last weeks and months, but feel free to reach out to us if you have any question. Thank you.
All right, and you can notice that their email addresses are right on the right-hand side of the screen for ease of contact. Thank you very much, Thomas and Dagan. Next up, we have a overview from Siggy Oscarson. Siggy, take it away.
Thanks, Brett. Hi, everybody. Just a short update today about Teranode. I wanted to start with a recap of actually the roadmap and what we're working on. We at the beginning of this year, we were preparing for the proof of concept scalability test that actually ran during the London Blockchain Conference in May. in which we managed to do 1 million transactions a second for 2 weeks. It was a very successful test. The original test was planned for 6 months, but we did it only for 2 weeks because we wanted to increase the number of nodes we did. So we ran on 6 nodes, which was a great success. The Q3 was all about listening mode, which basically means that we're putting Teranode on mainnet and listening to all the transactions and blocks coming in and making sure that we're validating everything correctly. And Q4 is when we actually go into mining mode and we're going to start mining. So what's the status at the moment? We've had Teranode listening on mainnet since August. And since, what does that mean? That means we're doing full transaction validation and we're doing shallow block validation. I have to admit that. We're not doing full block validation yet because we're doing the sync. So when Teranode is in a, we call it a legacy sync mode, when it's downloading blocks from the network, it assumes the block are actually okay. I think similarly to the SV node does, and adds them to the blockchain, does a short block validation. And since we started listening on mainnet, we have been running multiple nodes. So we're running, I think we are running 3 nodes, and the provisioning team is running a couple of nodes as well. So if you are connected to the BSV blockchain network, you might actually see in your logs a Teranode connecting to your node in the logs. This is all real. Another big step that we're doing in moving forward is actually starting a Teranode from a snapshot. So we call it seeding. So seeding a Teranode from a snapshot. And what does that mean? That means that we take a snapshot of the UTXO store, of the state of the blockchain, and some other information, and that we're able to kickstart a Teranode on a point in time. And we've had some really good success over the last couple of weeks doing that. And we have a couple of nodes running on mainnet now that have been seeded from a snapshot from SV node, actually. And we're also able to take a snapshot from a running Teranode and do the same thing. So this is the way that Teranodes are envisioned and designed to be started in the future. So it's not, you're not supposed to be doing a full block download or a full download of the blockchain when you start a Teranode. You should just grab a snapshot, and it is possible to validate those snapshots. They're all very, very deterministic. It's very easy to calculate if that snapshot is actually correct or not. Yeah, join the network. We also have, at the beginning of September, we started, actually in August, we started discussions with Tal and Gorilla Pool to start a private beta. That was always the plan for Q3. And I think half September, a little bit after half September, they joined us and started running Teranode themselves. So they are running, so Tal and Gorilla Pool are both running Teranode in a private beta, getting some experience with how to run it, how to monitor it, how to visualize everything that's going on. There's a lot more visualization possibilities with Teranode than there's current SV node. And we're getting feedback from them about their experiences. So that will feed back into the developments in the coming quarters and improving Teranode before release. And one of the things that is was always planned for these quarters is just testing. So the proof of concept was very much programmed to the happy path to be able to show that UTXO blockchain can actually do 1 million transactions a second. And there's a lot of things that still need to be handled, like edge cases and concurrency issues when you have a large network, all kinds of things. So there's ongoing testing that goes on that, especially with regards to the peer-to-peer network. And so that's what the team is busy with now. Please be nice to them because it's very tedious work. You can spend 1 or 2 days going deep down a rabbit hole to find a problem. And these are very difficult problems to find with concurrency and things like this. This is the stuff that's been happening over the last 10, 15 years on the Bitcoin node that started in 2009. And we still need to do all this work on Teranode. So that is happening now. What's next? Next is, so we already started working on the deliverables for Q4, which is the miner node. We already have 3 Teranodes mining on a private Teranode network. So they're not connected to the legacy peer-to-peer network. They're not connected to anything else. They're on a separate network, and they are actually mining. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect it to the legacy network and actually start mining on testnet. That has not been started yet, but that will start this quarter. So I think my time is up. That is update for me. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the chat and I can answer at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Siggy. Next up, we have Connor Murray and also Aus. Aus and Connor, are you with us?
Yes. Thanks, Brett. Yeah, I'll cover maybe the stewardship topics, and then I'm going to hand it over to Aus also to cover the next slide for standardization. But quick update from our side. I wanted to cover the last kind of remaining project from the stewardship stream from a project perspective is the Chronicle Release. And the Chronicle Release is basically the last SV node update, major SV node update that will restore the remaining bits of the original Bitcoin protocol. We've already published details about the scope, but over the last month or two, we've been dealing with some feedback, basically with concerns around transaction malleability, which would be reintroduced with this update. I'm gonna spare everyone the details of what that is, but I'm happy to have conversations outside of this call about it. But with that said, we took those concerns seriously and basically trying to provide a happy path that promotes stability. So in the sense of if people have built applications or businesses in a way where they're not expecting malleability to be possible, how do we ensure that they can continue operating the way they are and without disrupting their business? Because no matter what, yes, we have this core philosophy of being aligned with the original protocol. We also want to promote stability. That's the reason why we want to lock the protocol, right? So there's ongoing discussions right now, just exactly what this is going to look like. But I just wanted to kind of highlight that we did take a step back and try and just refine the scope to ensure that we are doing things in a stable way. So the release is going to be delayed a little bit, and I'm being very vague because things are still changing every few days. But I'm happy to have a separate conversation with anybody about all this, and I'm would also really like feedback if any of the words on this slide make sense to you. But I'll stop there for now. But again, happy to answer any questions if anyone has them, and I'll pass it over to Aus.
Thank you, Connor.
Thanks, Connor. Thanks, Brett. So as the name says, another Oscarson. There's three of us. You can see it by the length of the beard. I'm the youngest, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about standardization. And so it's a new stream that just got revived. Connor and I have been working together for a year on stewardship, and now we're gonna run with standardization as well. So I'm gonna start with a big shout out because as you heard, Thomas and Dagan already talked about standards and tokens. So a big shout out to what they've been doing with the dev tools, all the efforts there. Also to Babbage, to Ty, who has been very involved in the BRCs, obviously. So I'm starting off with that. And as we've just a new team, we don't have anything to show for yet, but we just want to focus on what do we want to do, how we want to do it, why. And you might know the golden triangle with why, how, what from Simon Sinek. We're actually starting with who, because the who is very important. That's basically everybody on this call. So it's the BSVA that will be driving and coordinating any standard efforts, right, to make BSV a better ecosystem. But we're going to need contributions from all the companies, all the applications, all the builders within the ecosystem. So the who is not just us, but it's everybody who's passionate about BSV and building on BSV. And then we go to the why we want to do it. So why do you want to do standards anyway? So it goes down to the core that you want to make it easier for anyone to build on your platform, so on BSV. So this is why the developer tool survey did by Thomas is so valuable, and a lot of valuable stuff came out of it, but we're just going to build up on those foundation that they set this year and continue on that forward. And there you get also a more cohesive and interoperable application landscape with wallets being able to talk to each other, supporting the same protocols, etc., etc. And the how is basically is a revamp. We want to get developers involved. So there's BRC process. I'm not even sure if people are aware that there is such a process or that such a thing exists. So we actually want to get developers active in that and revamp these current processes. One idea, and it's mentioned here, is, for example, these BRC meetups that we get developers talking. What are the problems they're facing? Maybe together, putting their minds together, they'll be able to find solutions faster, sooner, better for the sake of the ecosystem, right? And that's for the internal standards. And then if you're looking outside, and Thomas mentioned with the W3C community working group, right? We also want to make sure that BSV aligns with existing standards. So we have our ISOs, for example, our W3Cs, IETF, etc. There's a lot of standards out there that for which BSV blockchain might be a perfect technology, but if we're not sitting there at the table talking with them about those standards, we don't have any say to influence them. So that's the sort of the two things that we want to be able to do. And then we go to the last part, which is the what, and that is publishing standards, right? We haven't published a standard for a while now, so that's really one of the biggest priorities within our stream. The first one is obviously the token protocol, because the work done there mainly by Degan and Mo and their team been doing a really good job getting all the wallets providers to talk together, getting all the protocols to talk together, and we're close there. So getting that into the open source software, and then also really publish a standard, which makes it then again easier for everybody to build tokens or build whatever they want to do with their tokens on BSV, right? And the what also regarding the standards working groups, again, it goes back to the collaboration of the entire ecosystem, right? So if there's a working group where your company might benefit, say it's a financial company that you're running and you're interested in ISO 222, we're not the experts on that topic. We'll be happy to drive and orchestrate and coordinate that. But the participation is actually where the BSV companies, the expertise comes in, right? So that's what we want to coordinate from a standardization perspective and really revive this and drive this forward into next year based on, as I said, the foundation laid by Thomas and his team. So again, happy to answer questions, but mostly actually happy to receive ideas and feedback on what your thoughts on are, where we should focus on, and just get involved, really. So thanks for that. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Alice. And yes, please feel free to fire away at Alice after the presentations from our value stream leaders and our stakeholders on any questions and contributions regarding standardization. Next up, we have Sean Ryan from the outreach team. Sean, how are you doing?
Doing well, thanks, Brett, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone. It's great to see all of you guys, or at least the people on camera. Give you a little update on what we've been doing in outreach over the last couple months. As you can see from some of the utilization slides that Tomas and Oz presented, we've been working closely with them to identify the strategic groups. The outreach team has been kind of focused on reaching out to these groups to help move forward on the memberships. And our ultimate goal is to maximize these memberships and to make sure our technical people are involved in the right groups. And just want to thank the utilization team for, their help in kind of moving these memberships forward. So we recently joined the W3C community, and we were lucky enough to attend an event that was timely with our membership. We had a nice team go out there, Project Babbage and a couple from his team. We had Jake Jones, Brett, and I believe a couple others, so I'm sorry if I'm missing a few people, but they had a great event. We were lucky enough to identify the community group for blockchain and become the chair again. It was resurrected by our group. So that's pretty exciting for me, to see that we were able to get in there and make some, headway. I know we had some really great conversations, and the goal is to maximize those conversations going forward and build better relationships with the people in W3C. Another strategic group we are currently in conversations with right now, we've already had a couple meetings with them, is the Banking Infrastructure Architecture Network. Really amazing group of individuals focused on the banking, core banking industry and open APIs. Myself and Tomas had a really great meeting with their executive director, and I thought it was very interesting because he had mentioned to us that they've never been approached by a blockchain company, and he also proposed to us that we put together an MOU and potential POCs we could potentially do with them in 2025. So nothing solid yet, but a very promising conversation moving forward, and I hope to update you all on that more going forward. We also have joined the Linux Foundation. Our utilization team has been meeting with representatives there to discuss the membership and how we can maximize the opportunities as well. On the exchange side of things, we finally finalized the CoinStore contract, and we are meeting with the tech team next week to implement SPV. I anticipate listing in early November. So that's exciting for us in the Philippines region. So good stuff. Another big piece of the work that we've been doing over the last 3 months is been our meetings with AWS and maximizing that relationship. Again, I always say that we have some really amazing contacts and champions for us within AWS. So I thank you to Jordan and Manuel for believing us and keep pushing this forward. But we have been working on identifying prototyping labs for 2025. We've narrowed it down to a couple revolving around IoT and AI. I think you'll hear more details on this going forward. I believe I can tell you a little bit about the IoT prototyping lab that we are looking at is with SmartGrow Agritech and what they're doing around with weather flow tempest on absorbing up IoT data onto blockchain. And just to update on some of the progress they've made there, they'll be doing another test here in the next week where they'll be putting 15,000 IoT devices data on every 5 minutes, which is a pretty significant number. I don't know. I know Alex told me the number, but it's a pretty large number of transactions per day. And it's really proving a nice use case as well. We're also strategizing with our contacts at AWS on how we can best participate and reinvent. And that is in December. So we will be looking to go there and potentially expand on some conversations. Also, Alex has been diligently following up with the contacts from the conference that we attended in Zug just last month. We did have some interesting conversations with some of the companies there. We are making some progress. And I think as most people on the call know, there's a lot of education and awareness involved, and these conversations typically take longer than normal. So like to give kudos to Marcin, who's done an amazing job over the last couple months putting together a developer relationship program. He's had some great successes. He's been working on a concept for a series of programmer events across Poland, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria. It includes a meetup as well as a workshop over the weekends. He's also been able to add 400 rookie developers, 1,000 aspiring developers to HubSpot. And they're currently trying to expand on those and trying to bring developers down the line and get them educated on our technology so we can have some more people out there building on our chain. Just some quick events that we have lined up, which I'm sure Martin will give you some more details on. Alex and Tomas and the team, as they mentioned earlier, has been working hard on the stablecoin opportunity in Uganda. And there is a summit coming up with focus on the biggest decision makers in the region. You know, they've been doing a great job putting that together. So we have a team of people going down there next month and excited to see the outcomes, but there's a lot of promise on all everything involved there because there's been a lot of openness and reception from the Uganda side. And, you know, we have an amazing team working on it. So I have a lot of confidence that they're going to be able to come through with a big win. Also, Alex has been expanding on our Gartner relationship, and we'll have a team attending the symposium here in the next month, and as well as the IETF conference in Dublin. The outreach team will be supporting that initiative as well. But that's what we've been working on. Please let me know if there's any questions. If you have any opportunities that you want to discuss, I do still meet with a lot of people that are looking to build on our chain, and I try to point them in the direction of the people that can help them the most. I was recently able to connect with a law firm out of the UK that's looking to build on our blockchain. I was able to connect them with Project Babbage, and they were able to put a scope together. So hopefully, you know, we can get more of those. So if anyone knows anyone looking to build or they need information, please put them in touch. I don't mind meeting with anyone and seeing if I can provide some value and keep finding opportunities for us. So thank you guys for your time today. And
thank you, Sean. All right. Next, we have Eva from the education team. Eva, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Brett. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Eva Porras. Many of you don't know me, but I am the new lead of the education department. So I wanted to use this opportunity today to introduce to you the ideas that we have for the coming months, which are basically all focused on the issue of adoption. The way we want to go about it, because we are trying to be opportunistic, is to focus on two major groups. First one is the group with the money, so basically the executives. And the second one is the group with the know-how, which are the developers, okay? So what we are trying to do right now is to develop courses that are custom-made for these two groups, with the idea of doing our research and development with specific universities with whom we have already an understanding, okay? And once these courses have been set up and they have been run, we can correct them and we can standardize the documentation that we can then use to, to take to other places and through other educational brokers or directly to companies, and adapt them to different sectors and so on. The idea is that we want to bring to these different groups is that BSV or technology is usable. It will give them a competitive advantage and is practical and it can be implemented. And all of our educational technology is going to be built around these concepts so that these groups, both of them, understand, what is the key or what are the key differentiating factors of BSV versus other blockchains. What will it do for them that will allow them to plan? And of course, the practical implementation, if we are talking about executive people, what they want to know is what is the return on investment for my company and how would I look after I do this implementation versus before, okay? And of course, the developer education is going to be focused on the foundational knowledge of BSV. How does the core aspects of our technology vary with respect to other ones? Then we focus on core development skills and finally on practical applications so that the value we add to them is absolutely practical. They can get into the workforce and they can from the start, add value. We see each one of our students is going to be a potential salesperson for us, is going to be a potential salesperson for our technology. So we want them very well-rounded, not only in the practical matters of the technology, but how it's used, and also on aspects that have to do with their sales skills, of our technology. This, is not going to happen immediately. We need to develop a few things. First of all, the programs. Second of all, a bunch of support technology in the sense of education, technical notes and documentation. We need to organize it properly so it's a little bit more available to the people, and all of you who may need educational material in the future can access it without problem, meaning you can find it and it's written in a way that is directly usable. You don't have to manage it or kind of start changing things because it doesn't really quite read the way it should or is not completely updated. We are going to be working on all of this. We are also going to be working on our platforms so that the relationship with our students is more immediate and is seamless, for them. But of course, we are thinking of using our partners' platforms. That means all the distributors, the educational brokers that we are going to be dealing with, we are planning to use their platforms as well because we think is the fastest way to spread our know-how. Once we go through this research and development period, which is going to take a few months, not many, but a few, then we will just focus on further integration and commercialization. We are here to support everybody. So talking to Sean or talking to other people, I know sometimes it kind of takes them out of their focus to prepare documentation and to kind of have to train or, teach a little bit of the basics, for technology to entrepreneurs or whoever it is, the group of interest. Well, we are here to do that. So please do not hesitate to reach for anything you may need. This is our objective, to be of support to the whole community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Eva. next up we have Martin talking to us about marketing and growth.
Hard act to follow after the fresh face of Eva. You got to see my old face, last one in the queue. Talk about some of the usual topics I think many of you have heard about before if you've been on previous calls. I've broken it down into 5 different points. I want to start off with a point on performance. Not very sexy, but important. In the last quarter in Q3 of this year, our metrics have continued to grow despite a few challenges, which have been known, I think, to everybody this year around, let's say, branding and awareness and different things which have impacted us even over the last year. But despite that, we've had some modest successes in terms of driving more leads, and leads are basically people in our database. If you're wondering what that is, as a non-profit entity, we obviously don't drive business ourselves, but we're in the business of educating and informing people. So getting people into our database so we can do that is important. And so as you can see in this this first point, in Q3 we had a massive increase compared to previous in terms of quantity compared to the previous quarter, and we managed to substantially drop our cost per lead, which is basically us doing more with less, which has been basically a trending topic this year. I think the second point here in terms of performance is to see that we've been able to focus on some higher value markets like the US, which in the past have been harder for us because there was a lot of competition. All our competitors in the enterprise blockchain space are on the US. Anyone from Ethereum, Solana, Hyperledger, they are spending a lot of money there. So marketing on those markets is obviously a challenge, to say the least. Moving on to the second point here, content production. We've seen some really good campaigns this week. This past quarter, about a number of topics which have already been touched on. Anything from the technical releases like ARC and SPV overlays, and some of our partnerships like Global Ledger recently, who's our new KYC provider for the entire ecosystem. And we're going to see some more of that coming for next quarter. And this is a moment where I think it's also worth shouting out to give a big thanks not only to our internal team, but to our trusted partners at Lightning Sharks, who are often the unsung heroes, who do a lot of the heavy lifting in the back to provide us with quality content marketing assets, which we use in these campaigns. My third point is events. Now, I know a lot of this has been touched on before. I'll just highlight a couple of them which maybe haven't been mentioned. We have an upcoming event in Madrid in partnership with Gate to Chain. I think a lot of people on this call will know the name Bart Bartolomeo, who is one of the founders of Gate to Chain. And he came to us not too long ago with the idea to run an executive event, an event for executives in Madrid at what is essentially the most prestigious business school in Madrid, to which basically pretty much everybody in politics and business in Spain is connected to. So that should be happening next November. He himself is an alumni, and Eva, who you met a few minutes ago, is also an alumni. So she will also be part of that, and she's been a driving force behind that event as well. Moving on down the list here, Uganda's had plenty of people talking about it, and Gartner is happening, the Gartner IT Symposium. I'll be attending myself since it's based in my hometown of Barcelona. That's next month, and it's maybe kind of the underdog here because Gartner as a partner, I think this has been said before, is a pretty strategic piece when it comes to penetrating the enterprise market in terms as a blockchain provider, or to hoist ourselves up to the same level that some of our competitors have been at for a few years now. And I'm thinking specifically to the likes of R3, Quarter, Hyperledger. I think that's enough about events. And also maybe I will relinquish the remainder of my time back to Brett so he can say a word or two about some of these community ambassador points.
Sure. Yes. Thank you so much, Martin. And yeah, this is a really exciting day, not just because of our Q3 town hall, but also because we are kicking off the Only Dust open source week with our partner Only Dust. And this is really exciting and indicative, I think, of the overall trends of the organization in terms of really leaning into open source strategies, whether it was the discussion of switching to the Apache 2.0 license in January, the development of flexible standards that don't, sacrifice reliability, or the introduction of overlay services to allow the distributed data services in a competitive market. All of these are serving to build a platform where open source devs can come along and with permissionless, they can just start building and innovating. And so we're really excited to participate in this. This is Only Dust Open Source Week number 9. It's the 9th in their series, but we're really excited at the prospects of this. So I encourage you to check out the Only Dust campaign. I'll drop a link in the chat so you can take a look at that, and please share it in the ecosystem. Share it in other ecosystems that you're also involved with where open source developers are contributing. We touched on a little bit of the W3C blockchain community group. That is a really, again, highlighting this, the professionalization and the commercialization of this emergent technology of the public blockchain. The innovation there being, the intersection of public and private data, including with overlay services, the ability to take a public blockchain and all of the features and the capabilities that you get out of that, in terms of securing it with proof of work across a distributed network, et cetera, and driving those costs down for the utilization, but relying on overlay services to also create permissioned access for content that is specialized. This is a level of professionalization and seriousness that unfortunately, or maybe fortunately in our case, as we're looking around at our competitors and other other projects that are looking at this emergent technology, we're just miles and miles ahead of them. And speaking to the W3C, it was very clear because there had been outreach to the W3C from the Ethereum side, and they indicated that. And I don't want to be disparaging or anything of that nature, but it was just very clear that the degree of seriousness that when upon close review that that the W3C was considering of projects like Ethereum, it just was not, it wasn't ready for enterprise grade. It wasn't ready for true commercialization with things like IoT, all the things that Mattia discussed in our guest presentation with the features that WhatsOnChain enables. There's just no competitor to BSV at this point. But it's not enough just to have no competitors. We have to build, and to Thomas's point, we have to build these inroads with these bodies that took previous technology and looked at how to professionalize and commercialize it, like the World Wide Web. That's why we're reaching out to the W3C and the IETF, the IEEE, and really building those inroads so that while we are representing a new emergent technology, we're also not trying to reinvent the wheel in terms of some of these other standards that have been developed. So those are the key highlights that have really been driven home, not just in this past quarter, although I think to an exceptional degree in this past quarter with the release of Overlay, but really across the entire year, looking back to January and even in the late stages of 2023. And then, touching on Eva's point about education, we really take that very seriously, especially on the community side. As someone that came from the community and really needed resources to be able to educate myself about all this. Now I have UTXO and all these things. I have those stored in my memory, and I know what they all mean. But there's a moment and time where you don't know what a UTXO is. You don't know why a stable protocol is so important. So we do these consistent videos, these ELI 5 videos with our host Rory Zimmerman to highlight those. And then, the Python code along, it's an example of, really digging deep. So, we have a great BSV Skills Center, and we'll drop that link in the chat as well, which the BSV Skills Center has a ton of resources for developers that are looking to get started. What library should they choose? Why should they choose? What's the value of a stable protocol? All of these things that can aid someone who is really, unable to differentiate the signal from the noise in this space. And that's one of the things that you get with an emergent technology. But with the code along sessions, what we're looking to do is really just dig in deep and really walk people through the sessions in a fun, relaxed, and informative environment. So we're looking to do a few more of those, including one maybe upcoming with looking at overlay services itself, because we're really excited about that. And then on the ambassador topic, there has been just so much positive momentum being built in our ambassador network, from business relationships that are forming across these different ambassadors in different regions, Ireland to the MENA region. And what you're getting out of the ambassador program and out of the community side of BSV with this strategy is you're finding other people who can see the proof of work, who can recognize the signal of the value of putting in the work right now to build these inroads, to build these networks, because of the layers of efficiency that will come on top of those. And the ambassadors doing business with each other, creating these relationships, keying each other into their successful strategies and their successful habits. This is an example of that. So we've seen 2 new ambassadors join us, Ken Sato being one of those, someone who I have a really close personal relationship with, and we're just excited to see that program grow. All right. With that being said, I want to open us up to the question and answer period. So I think to do that, we will be requesting that anyone that would like to unmute is able to, and we have the open floor for questions and answers.
Well, I put one in the chat early on in the meeting for Darren. Kind of along what you were saying, Brett, a second ago about how we try to simplify things to explain some of these complex ideas to people. So Darren, if you're still on the call, I'd love to hear more how overlays are like drones, because I'm a sucker for a good metaphor.
The drone analogy, yeah. So I mean, in some sense, overlays operate as independent actors with common rules. That's the same as these drone swarms you see during these presentations. So I'm not talking about the drones that are used to kill people, which is common use of drones these days. I'm talking about the ones that are used in demonstrations, the floating dragon kind of things with lights. So a coordinated swarm of drones, you could imagine that these are overlaying a city. So that was the imagery I was trying to evoke there. So yeah, an overlay network can form from individual operators that are working together for some higher purpose. And they each have simple rules that they follow. In the overlay case, this is accepting transactions of a particular type that have to conform to a particular business logic or have particular scripts in them. Or you could be doing sort of all sorts of off-chain checks as well to accept transactions into overlays. The point is they have common rules, and that's what allows them to form these overlay networks. And there's communication that happens between those overlay nodes in the overlay services. Code-wise, it's GASP, or Graph-Aware Sync Protocol, which is used to ensure that the overlay services within a given overlay network have a sort of common set of transactions. And if they go offline and come back online, they have a protocol which they can use to get up to speed again with the rest of the network. So yeah, that was the thinking in visualizing that as a swarm of drones. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. I might steal that one from you.
Of course. Yeah.
Excellent question. Any other questions from the chat? I have a question for Mattia. So Mattia, thank you very much for your presentation. And you highlighted that one of the key areas where you're looking to build, the what's on chain applicability and use case is in understanding and interpreting emerging trends on the network. And this includes, when you were talking about from the tags perspective, but you seem to indicate also that that even as they're rising, you may not be aware that you're looking at a trend because it might be you're unable to identify what it is. Whereas if you have a relationship, for example, with one set ordinals, and they can maybe tell you, hey, this is how we're structuring our data, and this is and that can help you guide how to not only interpret but then present that data. So my question was, what is the starting point for interpreting data that you don't necessarily know who's creating it or for what purpose, and how do you layer that in ways that you can make it more accessible to the outside network?
So for tags specifically, what we do right now is we expect people to normally reach out to us like, hey, we have a new protocol, new application, new kind of just category of transactions that you can recognize this way. We have in our documentation and also on our website, it's specified how to do that. We basically have a quick guide on what information you need to provide us for us to be able to tag your transactions. So we're essentially just looking for some pattern in the data that is specified. And we, by finding that pattern, then tag that transaction or output specifically. This is because we want to continue developing that relationship with the developers in the community so that we don't just go ahead and guess by ourselves, but people tell us, hey, this is what you can expect from us, or hey, we have a change coming, this is what you should do, and so on. And then we can in return essentially showcase those applications, those protocols on our website, and the more transactions they have, the more they trend essentially. And this is how others can then notice these applications and protocols, and so on and so forth.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions from our audience?
I don't have a question. This is Greg, but I just wanted to say thank you to all the hard work that everyone's putting in. Really appreciate it. Everything from what's on chain and the APIs. I use them all the time. Appreciate the work that's being put into the Arc. I'm working on some implementation that's going to be utilizing that. So again, appreciate everything you guys are doing from a developer perspective. Certainly, we are building all sorts of different applications that's using protocols and things that have, came along through the community. Everything from stuff that Luke's built to stuff with the one set, and then in that we're also building our own custom interpretations of these, right, and utilizing these protocols to utilize this global notebook to empower our applications. So yeah, I really do again appreciate it. I just wanted to say thank you, and thanks for a good meeting today.
Thank you very much. Yeah, maybe I'll just follow up with what Greg mentioned, and I'll just ask Sean. Sean, what is the value has recently been for you for not just demonstrating this things as a theoretical, but actually demonstrating a use case, especially with the emergence of tools like overlay services where you don't have to say, theoretically this is possible, but you can actually show pen on paper. And how has that been for you on the outreach side in terms of getting in the door and building those champions that you talked about, like you mentioned with AWS and other allies?
I think we're moving the ball, right. We're able to, I mean, a lot of people have having the conversations of what blockchain could do for many years, right? And we're right at the point where we're capable of showing people, and it definitely is helping the conversation move along, as you can see and hear in a lot of our conversations. There's a lot of proof of concepts coming through for 2025. So it's our job to execute and prove our technology. So the ball really is in our court to show them now, now that they've seen some of our demonstrations. We just have to, execute on the opportunities that we've been given through that. So excited for 2025 and what we're going to be able to accomplish.
Great. And maybe I'll turn that question around one more time to Thomas and just say, additionally to you, from the the ability to do something like the Uganda stablecoin project and showcase a proof of concept for the CBDCs, how important is that for you in terms of building those inroads? And, what do you foresee that leading to in the future, especially around 2025?
Yeah, I think one of the main objectives that we have is to make sure that we test it in real environments with real world users, and to ensure that when we build the core open source components, it's aligned with the company's needs, but also end users' needs as well. So that's why we started this pilot program series this year. So our first pilot program series is indeed in Uganda with the potential creation of a stablecoin, because a lot of things are going on to create effectively the stablecoin. It takes some time because there are a lot of discussions and licensing discussion, and the different companies needs to comply with the local jurisdiction, specifically the PSP, PSO licenses, and it's important first because we already have a stablecoin on BSV, the ChainT stablecoin, the Swiss franc stablecoin, which is a clear success because it's backed by a Swiss private bank. This is a huge success actually. But obviously the stablecoin market is huge. If you take the payment. The different payment use cases, you have also, of course, wholesale, retail, CBDC, but this takes time because currently the Bank of International Settlement is coordinating a lot of pilot projects with a lot of different central banks, but the negotiations with central banks takes really a lot of time. So I think the stablecoin, specifically the stablecoin use case, provide us with the ability to move faster actually than with the central bank, and to make sure that the way we architect our different stablecoin solution using open source components is also aligned with and interoperable with different CBDC requirements, and to foster and to make sure that when we talk with central banks, we have something concrete to show. I don't have by heart the last numbers, but the stablecoin market is huge. And if we take just the last weekend, the acquisition of Bridge by Stripe, the payment service provider, at $1.1 billion, we can directly identify that there is a lot of appetite for the stablecoin market. So I think BSV has to be present as well on the stablecoin market, and that's the reason why we are currently working with Kite Financial to have this stablecoin in Uganda.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And any other questions from our audience? All right. Well,
maybe
yes.
before you wrap up, maybe I've just answered one in the comments, which was very interesting. For me at least. Maybe not for everybody else. Also appreciate there's really not a lot of detail we can give in a public forum about the specifics of finances and such of the association. But yes, basically, glad to have a chat in private about these things.
Awesome. Yeah, maybe do you want to just answer that question? So I'll read it so that the audience can hear that's not present. So it was the question of, directed to you, Martin, you mentioned cost per lead. And what about general return on marketing investment is it positive? Are there any other metrics that you track? And you gave an answer in the chat, but do you want to just maybe summarize it for us?
I mean, the answer is yes and no. Of course, any good marketing is done by measuring the results of the actual marketing you're doing. So yes, obviously we measure the return. Now we are non-profit though, so there's a limit to what we track and how we measure and the value of what we're measuring. Right? Not everything is income. Oftentimes the value of what we're measuring is perceived value. What's the value of driving one new developer into the ecosystem, or what's the value of adding BSV to a new exchange so that 100 more people can trade every day. Some things are hard to don't have a direct answer. Income is easy to track. It's money. Return on income on investment when it's income is easy to track because it's money out versus money in. We measure that and other types of value. So it's kind of a mixed bag of nuts, really. So that was in essence, the answer I gave. I hope that's also what I conveyed in the written answer.
Yeah, perfect. And maybe if it's okay, Thomas, I might spin that back around to you one more time because he brought up, Martin brought up the, the role of being a nonprofit. And maybe if I could ask you, because you've been one of the key drivers towards this idea of, really aligning the association towards, an open source body that is how important is the role as being a nonprofit to that strategy in general, and how has it helped shape the vision for that?
Yes, the reason why we are currently pushing towards transitioning the association to be the open source governing body, it started with a discussion that we had with Gartner, because we are partnering with Gartner on a lot of different topics, and one of the Gartner analysts who is currently advising governments, central banks, and enterprises on which blockchain to choose, he mentioned to me a report, and in this report, in the Gartner report, the open source criteria was in number 2 or number 3. It was the number 2 or number 3 most important criteria when he advises governments, central banks, and enterprises on which blockchain to choose. If the open source, if the blockchain is not open source, it doesn't recommend this blockchain at all. So that's why we and this guy is the former CTO of Consensus, who was very active in the Ethereum space, who is now on the Gartner side. So he's quite knowledgeable in the blockchain space, even if we can have some divergences in terms of implementation. But still, just to show the importance of the open source criteria when it comes to choosing the relevant blockchain. So that's why for 1 year now we are pushing to make sure that the association is, as a non-for-profit, the neutral open source body, setting up open source requirements and making sure that different companies of the ecosystem are able to contribute to this open source effort. So the association is working with between 5 and 8 external companies. We are working with Gorilla Pool, with Script, with Babbage, with 4chain, with Tal, with a lot of different external teams to ensure that we are sharing the knowledge, and we are making sure that this external team will be able to not only build the open source component, but also build the commercial product using this open source component. So that's the reason why we want to diversify as much as we can the open source development. And the role of the association is basically, we are not reinventing the wheel. We are just doing what the Linux Foundation is doing on a lot of open source operating system components. We are doing the same for BSV blockchain. So it's not new, right? This is a known business model. So there is nothing really new. And obviously, when you talk to international standard body, and we mentioned WCC, IEEE, IETF, or even the Linux Foundation and so on, it makes sense that it's an open source body and a non-for-profit who interact with this standard body, because the relationship is easier, right? And the role of the association when we move forward is really to extract the business requirements coming from this international standard body and make sure that we define them as a business requirements for BSV blockchain. And then if you are a company willing to use the BSV blockchain, and if you are active in the financial industry, and that's a business requirement that we received to comply with the ISO 222 standard, because this ISO standard is quite important when you want to standardize the metadata for financial transactions, right? It's a kind of Swiss knife for the different format of financial transactions. So when we start to implement a standard, we don't want to start implementing all the standards on Earth, right? We need to make sure that when we implement a standard, it's because there is a need from one company of the ecosystem, and this company of the ecosystem tell us, okay, we need this standard to be implemented because we can close the deal if you guys implement this standard, right? So we need to make sure that we are business oriented. We receive this kind of requirements, and once we receive these requirements, we extract the business requirements and we implement it, right? And we believe that by doing so, it will allow us to open a lot of different markets. I was talking about the financial market, but it's the case on the identity side with W3C, DID, and so on and so on. So we please come to us if you have some standard in your industry, in your vertical, that you want us to implement. Come to us. You can reach out to Brett on the Discord channel, and then we'll discuss with you to see if there is a need, we will implement the standard into core open source components so that you don't have to, and so that you can focus on building commercial version of these open source components and make profit and create revenue for your activity.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I have I'll open the floor to the audience one last time, but I have one last question about what you just said, Thomas, but this maybe I'll direct to Dagan. So in terms of the open source components and the standardization and the tools that will, be related directly to business requirements and business logic and business needs, with the emergence of overlay services, with the flexibility that overlay services provides, what have you thought about where standards could come in terms of these overlay services? Because now you're not talking about necessarily a standard for a base layer but the overlay services could theoretically be, really unique in their configurations, and how to standardize these interactive overlay services. Is that something that you've considered?
Yes. Yeah, so the sort of roadmap ahead of us for overlay services and just open source software generally is we want to try and avoid companies competing to be the platform on which everybody else builds. This is typically what we've seen over the last 5 years of people trying to do. Build a platform, and then whatever business comes along and uses the blockchain, we get a percentage of that revenue. Most people will try and do that first. And it makes sense because there's a sort of captured user base, and you can start to tell VCs how much of a total addressable market there is, and so on. It makes some sense if you think with the VC mindset. But I think what we're missing out on if we go that route, and what we're trying to do with the open source components, is building the generics for how you propagate transactions across the network in a distributed system. Build those components in such a way where we're no longer necessarily competing to build those platforms, but it just sort of exists for us to use. Like back in the good old days where it was just a blockchain and you just can build applications around it. And now we have to consider the idea of that being sort of globally on a massive scale. So we're just building components to allow people to build their applications and kind of forget about the blockchain aspect of how difficult it is to get consensus across a global chain with 1 million transactions per second. So the components we're building open source, they should facilitate the basic needs. They should facilitate propagating transactions and getting Merkle paths back. So a lot of the work we've been doing is just been implementing SPV, which was way back in the white paper. We're just implementing stuff to make SPV like the default way that you interact with Bitcoin, rather than using global listening and relying on sort of central databases to go look up your stuff. Imagining that gets impossibly difficult to find the needle in the haystack and just passing transactions peer-to-peer instead. So we're building those basic tools where what we're doing is we're helping the ecosystem collapse into standards that facilitate those basic needs. And then one of the things that we've got on the roadmap is things like monetization within HTTP requests. And distributed identity solutions, again, baked into sort of HTTP. So then people can start building applications that are paid for by micropayments, which is only possible on BSV just because of the cost. And it has a distributed identity solution sort of baked in from the start. And because you sort of have to have those as prerequisites to build all of the things we talk about more generally, if we can just agree on a set of standards there, which is why we're working with the W3C to kind of establish that more globally, then we can start to compete on things like service level. We can compete on things like, well, I can build the best UI for this particular application, and people can compete just on the UI front without having to worry about all those technical things. And we can have people that are very technical and good with databases to compete on the speed of their overlay services by building a better storage solution that implements the same interface. So you can still use the open source stuff. You've just got this storage speed and retrieval of data much faster than anyone else. Well, then people are going to start using your overlay service rather than somebody else's. And we can bake this all into the sort of decision patterns within the clients so that we can have things like, if you need a particular token of a particular type, you ask the entire overlay network, and whoever can respond fastest and cheapest, that's where you get the data from. So we can have a sort of competition at every layer of the application stack, every layer of that sort of topology that we're referring to as the mandala upgrade. So yeah, that's how we're keeping our open source stuff out of the sort of commercial space. And we want to encourage companies to stand up some of these services and then compete to provide the best service for the cheapest price they can afford to sell it for. I hope that explains my stance on where the line is drawn between the open source components and the commercial aspect.
It does. Yeah, thank you. And I see that we're at time, so we're going to be wrapping this up. But maybe I could just summarize what I heard from you. Just that in a way, we have operated from this mindset of, okay, scale is not possible, so we have to build these mechanisms in place to facilitate the fact that scale is not possible. The way that I think it in my head is like, at Disneyland, it would be great if everyone who wanted to ride the roller coaster could just ride it, but they can't because of scale limitations. So we have to form a line, a queue, and then you have to, so there's all these problems that basically you have to mitigate because of the fact that scale is not possible. And basically what you're saying is that with the introduction of overlay services, what we're really inviting businesses to do is to say, imagine if, scale wasn't an issue, that truly we could horizontally scale with market demand, and so you have to almost reimagine and go back to the drawing board and say, okay, wow, what could be possible at a commercial level, at an enterprise level, when scale is not an issue, and the interplay between how open source components and commercialization factor into that, I think, is a perfect marriage. So thank you very much, Dagan. Thank you to all of our participants. Thank you to everyone who joined into this quarterly town hall. I am your host, Brett Banfi, Manifestable. And if there were any questions that we didn't get to in the chat, feel free to send me a message and I can take those directly with the relevant people. Yeah, I encourage everyone to follow our socials, please, to reach out to me on the Discord. The website is discord.gg/BSV, and I can get you started plugged in. And thank you very much. We'll see you at the next one.